What's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my 2021 best books video. I know we're well into February, but I read some pretty good books in 2021 and I didn't just want to gloss right over them. I have 9 best of categories that I was able to split them into. Also, they're in no particular order. It's just the best of the best that I read in 2021. Not ones that were published in 2021, just the ones that I read that year. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm just going to start at the top. Best contemporary fiction. Fiction is what I read the most of. It's my favorite genre. I love a good yarn. So the best fiction novel that I read, and I do have it, a physical copy of it, because it's probably one that I would reread. And I think it's even a debut, which is incredible. I just think that's so impressive whenever you have an author who's never published anything before and their first one is a banger, and that is Luster by Raven Leilani. It says she's stumbling through her 20s, sharing a subpar apartment, clocking in and out of her admin job, making a series of inappropriate sexual choices. She's also haltingly giving heat and air to the art that simmers inside her. And then she meets Eric, a man with a family in New Jersey, including a wife who has agreed to an open marriage with rules. Soon, Edie finds herself invited into Eric's home, not by Eric, where she becomes a de facto role model to his adopted daughter. Edie may be the only black woman young Akilah knows. So this is a fairly recent one. It was just published in 2020. It's super short. It's like 230 pages. You can rip through it pretty fast. There were so many beautiful, sparkling sentences in this. This is the main character, Edie, describing Eric and the way he kind of makes her feel. His joy is raw in a way that makes me feel like I can unzip my skin suit and show him all the ooze inside. Just like wacky, beautiful, weird, amazing sentences like that. It was full of that. I was so impressed with the writing. Basically, this is like a super boiled down, concentrated version of what it means to be a young black woman, like a 20-something black woman in America, exploring all sorts of aspects of your life, career, relationships, all of that stuff, and getting it wrong. There's lots of commentary in here on class, race, identity, work, family, all of that. Like, you get kind of every little facet of Edie's life. We get a good chunk of that in this book, and it's so descriptive, it's so detailed, it feels very real. She's definitely one of the most well-rounded characters I feel like I've read in a really long time, because you get inside her head and you get to see, you know, every little decision that she makes, even when she kind of messes up. Which honestly, sometimes those are like the funnest decisions to watch people make, is the bad ones. So yeah, highly recommend this one. We'll literally read anything that Raven Leilani publishes in the future. The next category is science fiction, one of my personal favorites. And the best book that I read in 2021 in this category was A Psalm for the Wild Built. This one was super short. It basically felt like a novella. It was literally like 150 pages. This one was genuinely one of the most unique storylines I think I have ever read in a book. The length of it definitely left me wanting more, and I know this summer, I think summer 2022, there's a sequel coming out that I am so pumped for. The language was accessible, very soft, kind of smushy sci-fi, if that makes sense. It's you know, there was no like science talk that was difficult to understand. Now, there definitely was some world building in here, but it was done in a way that felt very kind of bite-sized. It was very manageable. I was never overwhelmed or confused. The culture is like almost entirely unrecognizable. Basically, our main character's name is Dex. They are a non-binary monk. Dex gets super tired of just kind of hanging out at the monastery, and so they're like, you know what, I'm gonna go on an adventure, be by myself. Dex is very kind of antisocial. And of course, what better to do with the plot when you have an antisocial main character than to force someone into their life. So cue Mosscap, who is a robot. And so Mosscap kind of stumbles upon Dex in their ox bike one day and won't shut up. And so that's kind of how it begins. It's very much about their relationship with each other. I loved the like human and robot dynamic. As weird, as like sci-fi as it sounds, it was actually very cozy and quite heartwarming. I'm so excited for the sequel. Definitely on my TBR. So the next category is fantasy, and the best fantasy book I read was Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyachenko. I believe this is a Russian translated novel, so I may totally be getting their names wrong. This was absolutely fascinating. I'm not gonna lie, okay, so it feels kind of long, but not in a bad way. It's because it's just so much story. This reminded me a lot of The Secret History. I know people either love or hate The Secret History. I am on the love side. I'm obsessed with that book. It's probably one of my favorite. It's probably like the ultimate dark academia. So here's the blurb, because I feel like I'll butcher it if I try to like sum it up myself. While vacationing at the beach with her mother, Sasha meets the mysterious Farit Kazenikov under the most peculiar circumstances. The teenage girl is powerless to refuse when this strange and unusual man with an air of the sinister directs her to perform a task with potentially scandalous consequences. He rewards her with a strange golden coin. As the days progress, Sasha carries out other acts for which she receives more coins from him. As summer ends, her domineering mentor directs her to move to a remote village and use her gold to enter the Institute of Special Technologies. Though she does not want to go to this unknown town or school, she also feels it's the only place she should be. Against her mother's wishes, Sasha leaves behind all that is familiar and begins her education. The activities that they have to do for class is memorizing these texts that are like impossible to read. None of the words make sense. It's literally like another language, like a language that they haven't like studied before, that they don't know. They have to memorize it, and it basically changes the fabric of their thoughts. If that makes any sense, I don't even know how to describe it because it's so like abstract and kind of vague, but in a way that I actually really enjoyed. This is a really good description of like what the activities are like to do. It says Sasha harnessed herself into the text and pulled it. She felt as if she were untangling a knot of barbed wire with her eyes. There is a murder at one point, which is really not, it's not discussed at all, and it's not the main focus of the plot like with The Secret History. So I don't want you to think that it's like The Maidens or The Secret History in that sense, because it doesn't give off that like whodunit vibe, but it is very, very good. The next category is nonfiction. The best nonfiction I read for sure was Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. This was another relatively short one. It's under 300 pages. It focuses on pretty much exactly what it sounds like. So feminism, but as it relates to women of color, and how that's very different than regular feminism or like white woman feminism. It is full of so many facts that I would never have known otherwise. Like you don't hear that kind of thing on the news. So many statistics that really open my eyes to how unequal things really are. And how like as a white woman, I automatically am like born with privileges that I didn't earn. This was a good quote that kind of summarizes it. She says, "When feminist rhetoric is rooted in biases like racism, ableism, transmisogyny, etc., it automatically works against marginalized women." So she's basically saying how traditional, like what you think of when you think of feminism is actually more like white woman feminism, and it doesn't work for everybody, and it doesn't benefit everybody, and it doesn't always benefit women of color. There's really specific things that the author mentions, and then like some more broader topics, just like the patriarchy and privilege in general. This is an excellent one to read if it's still February, if it's still Black History Month, or even if it's not when you're watching this video. It feels kind of dense just because of the topic, but it was genuinely one of the most educational books that I read in 2021, and I definitely think whether you're black, white, purple, man, woman, you know, non-binary, whatever, you definitely need to read Hood Feminism. The next category is poetry. I don't read a lot of poetry, but I definitely am open to recommendations, so you guys leave those below. The best poetry that I read was She Had Some Horses by Joy Harjo. This one was only like 72 pages, super short, full of really, really good poems that reference Native American life. And I feel like I can't even like give a description of this because poetry it really does speak for itself. I'll read this one called Backwards. The moon came up white and torn at the edges. I dreamed when I was 4 that I was standing on it. A white man with a knife cut pieces away and threw the meat to the dogs. So lots of like references to Native American life, growing up Native in America. Her poetry kind of does feel like a sort of autobiography in a sense. So if you're interested in reading more Native American stories, I really recommend this one. And then the final category was graphic novel. So the best graphic novel I read was Grass Kings. It is set in a town that is run by 3 brothers, Bruce, Asher, and Robert, the latter of which has lost his daughter. But they're all sort of kind of white trash, basically. They consider this little strip of town their kingdom, their grass kingdom. So the conflict comes in when the battered wife of an opposing town's sheriff crosses the lake. I think she like swims across the lake. She ends up friends with one of the brothers, and then the hellbent sheriff comes knocking. And so that's kind of where the trouble begins. The art in this was so cool. It was like messy, outside of the lines, watercolor style. I loved the sort of man versus man theme, the man versus nature theme. And it ended on a cliffhanger, which I really liked, because you sort of, at the end, you're like, is there a killer loose in the Grass Kingdom? And so then, obviously, it makes you want to read volume 2. So I will get volume 2 on my TBR at some point this year. Alright guys, you've reached the end of the video. The moon has risen, it's dark outside. Thanks for watching, and give me recommendations below. What videos do you want to see? What books do you want me to read? What are you reading for February? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.